Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is September 12th, 2024. Hair and skincare products expose kids to hormone disrupting chemicals, study finds. A new study links the recent use of personal care products like lotions, ointments, and hair conditioners to higher levels of endocrine disrupting chemicals called phthalates in young children. And children of different racial and ethnic groups seem to have different levels of exposure to these chemicals. Phthalates are a group of chemicals added to plastics to make them more flexible and durable. They are used as ingredients in some personal care products. These chemicals are endocrine disruptors, which means they can mimic, block, or interfere with the body's own hormones. And when it comes to children, the concern is that they might cause disruptions during key developmental moments. Prior students have linked regular exposure to phthalates during pregnancy and early childhood to negative impacts on children, including impaired brain development and behavioral problems, as well as other health concerns. Researchers have also raised concerns that the widespread presence of endocrine disrupting chemicals like phthalates in the environment may be contributing to girls getting their first menstrual period at an earlier age. Phthalates don't stay in the body for very long, but health researchers worry about the cumulative effects of those exposures. The scientific evidence on the harm of phthalates is not yet conclusive, but is accumulating and compelling, says Michael Bloom, a professor at George Mason University, whose research focuses on endocrine disrupting chemicals. And this is why we have a great concern, especially among these very young children whose brains are still very actively developing. Bloom says. In the new study published in the journal Environmental Health Perspectives, Bloom and his colleagues examined clinical data from 630 children ages 4 to 8, from whom they collected urine samples. Their parents or guardians filled out surveys about any hair and skincare products they'd applied to the child within the past 24 hours. We found that the recent use of several different types of skincare products was associated with higher urinary concentrations of several different types of phthalates, Bloom says. That in itself isn't new. He notes that prior studies have found similar results in infant and pregnant women, though not in young kids in this 4 to 8 age range. But the new study provides clear evidence of the links between kids' exposures and range of personal care products, says Dr. Lynn Goldman, a pediatrician and epidemiologist who formerly served as an assistant administrator for the toxic substances at the Environmental Protection Agency. She was not involved in the new study. Goldman notes that until now, concerns about phthalate exposure have often focused on diet, since the chemicals can leach into food from plastic packaging, as well as food handling equipment such as tubing and conveyor belts. I think we should be much more concerned than we have been in the past about the facts about these chemicals might be allowed in cosmetics and personal care products, says Goldman, who is now in cosmetics and personal care products, who is now the dean of the Milken Institute School of Public Health at George Washington University. Bloom and his colleagues also found differences in phthalate exposures between race and ethnicity. For example, they found strong associations between the use of hair oils and elevated phthalate levels among children who identified as Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific Islander. Meanwhile, the use of body lotion was associated with the kids of phthalates used as ingredients in personal care products among white children, but not among Black and Hispanic children. Bloom speculates that some of these differences may stem from differences in the kinds of products marketed to different groups, but we haven't been able to disentangle that. Overall, Black children had the highest levels of phthalates in their urine. Other studies have found that many beauty products targeted at communities of color have high levels of these chemicals. I think this is a very important study because we need to understand exposure in vulnerable populations such as children. And understanding differences in exposures by racial and ethnic backgrounds can help researchers figure out ways to reduce risks, says Dr. Shruti, an assistant professor of environmental, reproductive, and women's health at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, who was not involved in the current study. And as social media helps fuel a craze for skincare among tweens and teens, Ma says the findings are an important reminder that some of these products could potentially be exposing kids to endocrine disrupting chemicals. I have 3 teenage children who are interested in products and self-care products, and it's something that I'm very concerned about, she says. She had her teens download a free app called Yuka. Shoppers can simply scan the barcode of a product while in the store, and the app will flag potential health concerns linked to ingredients. She notes you can also look up products in the Environmental Working Group Skin Deep database. Ultimately, though, Goldman says, I don't think that it's really up to parents to be policing the ingredients in these products. I think it's a job for the FDA. It's a job for the EPA. She says more research is needed, but the findings reinforce the need for regulators to take a closer look at this family of chemicals and ask tougher questions about how all this cumulative exposure may be affecting children and other vulnerable populations. Drug makers say obesity medicine shortages are easing, but patients struggle to fill prescriptions. Bill Combs, who lives in Boston's South End, has lost 28 pounds since he started using the obesity drug Wegovy. But when he went to refill his prescription in late August, things didn't go as planned. I take it every Wednesday, so this Monday my prescription was up, he says. So I called to fill my prescription and they said, you're fine. When I went in to get it, they said they're out and they're going to be out for the foreseeable future. He'd been worried about missing doses of the drug after a friend had a similar trouble. Then somehow the pharmacist found some Wegovy, but Combs doesn't know how. I did end up getting it, which is fortunate, but I do worry about it, he says. I don't worry about what's going to happen in a month. The massive popularity of Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound has meant that drugs have been in and out of short supply for more than a year, as the drug makers have been struggling to keep up with the skyrocketing demand. Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly are the pharmaceutical companies that make the popular medications for diabetes and obesity. They recently said that their drugs are available again, with the exception of the starting dose of Novo Nordisk's Wegovy. But patients like Combs are still having trouble at the pharmacy counter. Drugs remain hard to get. David Knapp tells Lilly Mounjaro for his type 2 diabetes and has a podcast, blog, and YouTube channel called On the Pen. Patients taking the drugs reach out to him every week to share their experiences coping with shortages. They're doing the tricks, right? All the tricks, he says. They're going up a dose. They're moving back a dose. Some people I've heard calling 100 pharmacies in their state just trying to find their dose. He says many patients took offense at drug makers' declarations that the injections are available again, and the Food and Drug Administration has kept the drugs on its official shortage list. The agency says it needs to be sure the drug companies can meet demand. That includes verifying the manufacturers have a supply cushion for the drugs and that the companies have fulfilled all their back orders. It's not clear how long the process will take. Pharmacies out of stock. Right now, pharmacists can't be sure they'll get their full orders from drug wholesalers, says Aaron Fox, who tracks drug shortages as part of the American Society of the Health System Pharmacists. That can mean that if you might order 20, you might only get 10, she explains. When wholesalers allocate their drug supplies like that, she says it usually means there isn't enough of the drug to go around. The supply chain is complex for refrigerated medicines like Mounjaro and Zepbound, Eli Lilly spokesperson Rachel Sorvik wrote in an email to NPR. There may be many reasons why a particular pharmacy does not have a particular dose of that medicine in stock, Sorvik says. Lilly recommends that patients contact their pharmacy approximately 1 week before the medicine is needed to start the prescription refill process sooner. Novo Nordisk spokesperson Jamie Bennett told the NPR the company can't control which pharmacies or patients get Ozempic in the U.S. The company is limiting how much of the starting dose of Wegovy it produces to focus on supplying the drug to patients already on it, and who work their way up to higher doses for continuing treatment. Signs the shortage is easing. The drug companies are spending billions of dollars building new factories and expanding production. Novo Nordisk told investors in August that it has been able to double U.S. Wegovy prescriptions this year. While demand is still expected to exceed supply, we grow more confident in our ability to supply. Novo Nordisk Executive Vice President of North America Operations Doug Langa said on the call with investors. For Lilly's part, the company tells NPR its factories that make these drugs are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Drug samples make a comeback. Pharmaceutical sales reps continued visiting doctors' offices despite the shortages, but they stopped bringing free samples with them, says Dr. Scott Isaacs, the president-elect of the American Association of Clinical Endocrinology. Our sign the shortages may be easing. The samples are back. They're in our office frequently, Isaac says of the sales reps. They're bringing samples, they're bringing brochures, and they're telling us that there are no shortages. The shift has made him optimistic about the drug supply. It does encourage me to write prescriptions for medications that I was previously not, because I knew that the patient wouldn't be able to get the medication, he says. But unfortunately, sometimes you still write the prescription, and the patient still can't get the prescription. Trump faces his own debate fallout just months after benefiting from Joe Biden's.
She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country,
the values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
People start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies.
With what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
He dominated in 2016 all of his Republican colleagues. Here she was...
Hate.
Right.
Absolutely. Kamala won. She was articulate, well-spoken, and energized, whereas Trump was all about anger and hate.
I was just thinking about it as I was walking. I thought Harris won the debate. I think she commanded the stage. I think he looked confused, tired. Most importantly, he looked beaten and submissive to her. So I thought she dominated him in a way that historically we haven't seen. He dominated in 2016 all of his Republican colleagues. Here she was able to make him look weak and submissive.
I think the moments that stood out the most was when he was just rambling on about the most absurd things and people coming into this country eating dogs and cats.
Well, I think it was pretty funny that, he was talking about people eating dogs and cats. I mean, really. Or we never knew that all these immigrants came for sex changes, too. These millions of immigrants who are destroying our country come here for sex changes. So that's new to me.
I was really, really worried that Kamala was going to kind of drop the ball like Biden did. But I think she handled it well.
Strong and beautiful, and we look forward to her being our president.
Then we saw in Atlanta just a few months ago. There was so much expectations coming to this as the race had narrowed in the last few days. First debate for Kamala Harris, where seasoned Donald Trump has had 7 contrasting styles and backgrounds and kind of philosophies in the debate. So it was a real clash of differences between the two. Kamala Harris came in with a bunch of great degree of difficulties that she had to achieve tonight. She's not as defined. Voters, a good chunk, want to know more about her. Given that she had such a tall task and the stakes were so high, I thought she performed very admirably with against a very formidable opponent and so much scrutiny, on this race. So she delivered one of her best debates. She was generally on the offense against Donald Trump, touting her experience as vice president, having a clear vision for where she wanted to lead the country, and was just from the opening moments of the debate, really going toe-to-toe, showing that she had the presidential gravitas that's required for such a position, and I thought she accorded herself pretty well. Yeah, Donald Trump, I'd say, had an inconsistent performance, certainly not as well as he did in Atlanta. He knocked out the sitting president and not having him seek re-election, so it was a high bar for him to achieve such success. As the debate progressed, he just got a little bit less disciplined, and you could tell that Kamala Harris achieved her goal of getting under his skin, and I think took him off his best debate game tonight. Clearly, both of them have the target audience of independent swing voters and a handful of battleground states. I don't know that any of them really sold the deal or finished that tonight. It's hard in 90 minutes to have people that are kind of low information voters, very casual, don't see it all the time, so make a formative decision. If anything, maybe in the coming days you'll see some slight gains by Harris in that department because she probably had the better overall performance. But there's this very small swath of voters. There's not many of them, but the elections have been so close in the last 2 years, and may even be closer this time, that even if you affect thousands of them, tens of thousands, that could be enough to swing a very close election. It was certainly a...
So music superstar Taylor Swift has launched her Kamala Harris era. The Democratic nominee and former President Donald Trump participated in their first and likely only debate. And shortly after that debate, Taylor Swift announced her endorsement of Harris. So according to the Kamala Harris campaign, they were not expecting or coordinating this endorsement after the debate. However, they were ready. Shortly after the announcement came out, the Harris campaign was launching friendship bracelets on the campaign website. Taylor Swift has consistently backed candidates who have been vocal on LGBTQ plus rights and women's rights. Both Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and other candidates that she has backed in the past have lined up on those issues. She also cited that Donald Trump shared fake AI images of Taylor Swift saying that she endorsed Donald Trump and that she wanted to fight misinformation with the truth. As of right now, it's unknown how big of an impact Taylor Swift's endorsement is going to have on this already very tight race. However, one thing is known: when Taylor Swift speaks, young people and people across this country listen.
The Associated Press.
Donald Trump emerged Wednesday from a rocky debate against Kamala Harris, looking to regain his footing with 55 days until Election Day. The first ballots already out in Alabama and other states on the cusp of early voting. Not even 3 months ago, Trump stepped off the debate stage in Atlanta, having watched President Joe Biden deliver a disjointed, whispery performance that led the 81-year-old Democrat to end his re-election bid and endorse Harris, his vice president. By the end of Tuesday night, it was a 78-year-old Trump on the defensive after the 59-year-old Harris controlled much of the debate, repeatedly baiting the Republican former president into agitated answers to replete with exaggerated and mistruths. The performance left many Republicans scrambling to pick apart Harris's performance and insist that Trump still has time to refocus on the economy, immigration, and other issues that could sway a closely divided electorate. I think the contrast could have been drawn more sharply on what her policies have done over the past 3.5 years, says Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia in a critique of the former president's approach. That's what I would have focused on. Harris's campaign immediately pitched the idea of a second debate. Fox News has proposed an October matchup, but with moderators that Trump has indicated he does not prefer. And he said this via Truth Social account Wednesday that there is no need for a second round. In the world of boxing or UFC, when a fighter gets beaten or knocked out, they get up and scream, "I demand a rematch, I demand a rematch." Well, it's no different than with a debate. Trump wrote as he claimed victory, "She was beaten badly last night, so why would I do a rematch?" Trump and Harris were together briefly Wednesday in New York, where they joined President Biden and other dignitaries to mark the 23rd anniversary of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center. They shook hands for the second time in 12 hours, with the first coming when Harris approached Trump on the debate stage to introduce herself in the first sign of the aggressive approach she would take during the event. The former president, who flouted convention with a surprise appearance late Tuesday in the post-debate spin room, insisted he won the night, though he also blasted the ABC moderators as unfair, was a tactic acknowledgement that he did not accomplish when he won it against Harris. Trump and some of his allies in online posts speculated about punishing ABC by taking away its broadcast license. The network doesn't need a license to operate, but individual stations do, or denying access to its reporters. "We had a great night. We won the debate. We had a terrible network," Trump said Wednesday on Fox News. "They should be embarrassed. I mean, they kept correcting me, and what I said was largely right, or I hope it was right." Harris was jubilant late Tuesday, telling late-night rally-goers in Philadelphia that it was a great night, even as she repeated that she sees Democrats as underdogs against Trump. She won the endorsement of music and cultural star Taylor Swift, as a range of political commenters and strategists on both sides of the political aisle expressed a broad consensus that she bests Trump. Still, there was no evidence the debate yielded immediate broad shifts toward Harris among people who watched, and the Trump campaign pointed at news reports featuring voices of undecided voters not being swayed for her. His campaign was not considering any strategy or staffing changes, said an official who was not authorized to speak publicly by name. Trump hit the points he needed to hit, the official said, and the debate felt lopsided because Harris was not pressed by the moderators, especially on her moving away from her earlier, more liberal positions on some issues. Harris's senior campaign aides were pleased with her performance, but still see a 50-50 race. The debate, in their view, was a maximized opportunity. Harris communicated her priorities and held Trump accountable in front of a national audience, including voters who were first tuning into the campaign. Their job over the next 8 weeks, they say, is to capitalize on the performance by reaching and organizing their targeted coalition. About 6 in 10 debate watchers said that the Harris outperformed Trump, while about 4 in 10 said that Trump did a better job, according to a flash poll conducted by CNN. Before the debate, the same voters were evenly split on whether Trump or Harris would win. The vast majority of interviewed debate watchers, who do not reflect the views of the full voting public, also said that the event wouldn't affect their votes in the election. Perceptions of the two candidates remain largely unchanged. He says a lot of stuff, and he said so many things over the years, and if you want to internalize that in a way you think is any different from the past, my point is that doesn't make much difference, insisted Senator Mike Braun, Republican. Nonetheless, with pending battles for control of the House and Senate, Republicans on Capitol Hill found themselves answering for Trump's most outlandish statements, notably his claim that Haitian immigrants in Ohio are eating domestic cats and dogs. When Florida Senator Rick Scott was asked about the appropriateness of Trump's comments, he deferred questions to Hung Chau, the Republican Senate nominee in Virginia. President Trump is President Trump, and you got to admire him for that, said Chau. Republican Governor Chris Sununu, the New Hampshire, allowed that Harris won by traditional debate standards, but fell short in convincing swing voters focused on their economic conditions. The majority of those swing voters are still results-driven, Sununu said on CNN, adding that Trump still has opportunities to sway voters if he concentrates on the economy, immigration, and especially foreign policy. Yet even when talking policy, Trump handed Democrats a cudgel with his answers on health care. After twice running for president on promises of repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act, commonly called Obamacare, Trump falsely insisted that he saved the 2010 law. At the same time, Trump stood by his long-standing promises to replace the law with something better, but when pressed, acknowledged that he still had no specific proposal. I have concepts of a plan, Trump said in a remark that became quick fodder for online memes and merchandise. Braun promised those voters will hear more about GOP accomplishments and proposals, but acknowledged that it may not be Trump leading that effort. Whether he does it or the rest of us have to do it, the case will be made between now and November 5th. An undecided swing state voter watched the debate. It moved the needle. Dunwoody, Georgia. A small but potentially crucial slice of voters remain undecided about the presidential election this fall, including in toss-up Georgia. Just outside Atlanta, Cameron Llewellyn, a father of 3 little kids, is one of them. In 2020, Llewellyn voted for Joe Biden, but 4 years prior, he cast his ballot for Trump. And in the last election, he split his ticket between the Republican candidate for governor and the Democrat running for U.S. state, with early voting in 2024 a few weeks away. Llewellyn was left stuck. This is tough, he says. Suburban voters like Llewellyn have helped shape recent elections. In this closely divided state, as some independents and disaffected Republicans drifted from their party in the Trump era, Metro Atlanta suburbs are also growing and becoming more diverse. After Biden notched a win by just under 12,000 votes in Georgia, voters in 2022 sent Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock back to Washington and re-elected Republican Governor Brian Kemp. On Tuesday night, Llewellyn tuned into the debate in an effort to help crystallize his choice this fall. Llewellyn settled into a plush cream couch across from a big screen TV and a spread of pizzas. On a scratched piece of paper, he wrote in permanent marker the names of the 2 candidates and drew a line down the middle for his notes. Llewellyn says he soured on Trump as his presidency grew so chaotic. He began to fear for the stability of the government, especially after the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. At this point, Llewellyn says he knows who Trump is, but sees Harris as more of a question mark. He has some serious reservations. She didn't earn my vote, Llewellyn says. She just was basically anointed because she was a vice president, second in charge. And while Llewellyn felt Harris got off to a slow start in the debate, declining to directly answer a question on whether Americans were better off financially 4 years ago, he says he came away encouraged by her proposals to speed the construction of new homes and offer tax incentives for starting a small business. He also says he felt turned off when Trump did not offer any regrets about his conduct on January 6th. As I think about it, it makes me angry because I think that's crap, Llewellyn says. Take responsibility. And when Trump doubled down on his remarks about Harris's race and identity, Llewellyn says it stung. It's offensive to a lot of us, Llewellyn says, because you don't wake up deciding to be black. I'm an African American, and I've had people in the past for me speaking the King's English ask, "Why are you talking white?" or whatever. His vote is coming into sharper focus. Llewellyn says while he went into the debate leaning toward Trump, now he says he's more likely to vote for Harris. But he worries about the markets and interest rates and has been searching for a job for the last several months. He notes that the pace of hiring has slowed. Finding something that fits his experience in healthcare and technology has been slow going. He says if the economy takes a turn for the worse this fall, he will reevaluate his vote again. I want a president that's going to be really favorable to small business because that's how I could ultimately leave a legacy for my family. But if you're telling me we're going to wake up sometime in October and have a 10% slide on the market, I don't think Harris can run from that. Llewellyn says it's frustrating when people press why he has not made up his mind yet. He says he has always valued carefully studying the issues and learning about a candidate's policies. He thinks both candidates have upsides and drawbacks. At first thought, Llewellyn says the choice has not been gnawing at him. Day to day, I think about my kids, what we're going to eat, and soccer games and baseball. But reflecting on the debate and the many topics he's thinking about, like conflicts abroad, abortion, affordability, and democracy, he reconsidered. I guess it does weigh on me, he says.